Carl here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. And you're about to watch an interview with the American screenwriter, director, producer and actor, both on stage and in front of the camera, Daniel D. Weldon. The star of such movies as The Lay of La La Land, One Must Fall, Weekend Warriors, The Elephant Ride, Butter and Clyde, and Anonymous 616. That's the movie where we first became aware of his work, a great horror thriller that you can check out our review over on the site in written format and a video review on this very channel. In the interview, we discuss all aspects of Daniel's career, from the early days and his very early roles, to the difficulties he faced in trying to get his name out there, to the starring roles he has taken on, such as Jason in Anonymous 616 and Pete Terrence Pecker in The Lay of La La Land, and the upcoming Wesley in Weekend Warriors, as well as a lot more. It is a fascinating interview with someone deeply rooted in the industry of film and stage. Sit back and enjoy. Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. It's really appreciated. And I mean, we want to kind of start things off really with how you've been holding up in what has been a very difficult year across the entire world. How have you been holding up throughout the pandemic times?
Yes, good question. With COVID and everything that's been going on, and certainly in the US, as it is in England too, with politically speaking, I had several projects as an actor that got canceled because of COVID. So that was really tough. And it happened right up back in February of last year. And so I lost a lot of opportunities, but I was filled with gratitude that certainly Weekend Warriors, this film that's just coming out, it was kind of a good coincidence that certainly that COVID came about. So not only did the opportunities get canceled, but some projects that I did were postponed and they're editing and getting them finished. So it's kind of timely, and I'm so grateful to have this film Weekend Warriors coming out right now. And then I have another one coming out called Chaser. Hopefully it should release in the middle of February or March as well. So excited about that, excited about some of the early attention that's coming to the Weekend Warrior film that just released the other day. But yeah, it's been tough. I've learned a lot about myself in this time. It's been a really good break from acting, and we're still very limited in Los Angeles under the Screen Actors Guild. There's a lot of heavy parameters and lockdowns, so it's very difficult to shoot. Projects can be canceled right away, but I feel hopeful, and again, it's just been a great time. I was working on a play in between while we were still in COVID. Great actor named Ilya Volek, who starred opposite Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, along with many other great films. So he and I have been working on a play called Red, that's about the artist Mark Rothko. And so that's been keeping me busy, practicing my craft. We did film professionally. We shot the first of 5 scenes of that play, which I'd love to share with you. It should be finished in a couple of weeks even. It'll be like a sizzle reel being used to promote the play in Los Angeles. And but yeah, that's how I've been holding up. How about yourself?
I mean, because of what I do for a living, work never stopped for me. So
Sure.
For me, I was classified as a key worker, which is what they've classified lots of us in this country as. And you do a job that's required for the greater community, so to speak. So you will continue to go to work. When we were in lockdowns, I continued to work. So for me, for a very long time, I didn't really feel like, I felt almost detached. It's just me and my wife who live here. I have a 17-year-old son who lives with his mother. Okay. So even that is quite old and he's getting on. And while I have a large family, it was kind of like, well, look, we can't see each other. We got to stay safe and stuff like that. Yeah. Then I caught COVID myself last month.
Right, you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a kind of like I knew it was going to happen eventually, and still a shock. And obviously I'm better now. So that's great. And beyond that, it's just keeping busy and becoming an expert at using Zoom. Because even with the family,
Yes.
it's a matter of using Zoom to talk to
Yeah.
anyone now. But you try and look at things as in the most positive way possible.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, in regards to, you said you keep yourself busy, keep yourself busy with writing the play. Then, as someone who's been able to do that, what advice would you give to someone listening who perhaps is in a similar situation as you, projects being cancelled, work being cancelled and stuff like that, and who are maybe not coping as well? Is there any advice you could give?
Well, first off, great question. Yes, I think that whatever artist you are, or anyone for that matters, I had a good teacher once tell me you're as good as an actor as you are a person. So, taking that to heart, if it's specifically to actors or musicians, being that you cover predominantly those two genres on your channel, that practice makes perfect. And if you're allotted the space and the time to practice your craft, that's what I promote, because you just grow and grow and grow as you learn more about yourself, whether you're playing a character or playing an instrument, and that just takes time served. So if that answers your question, and it's therapeutic, when it's easy to jump on the phone. I mean, speaking of this play, Red, by the way, we didn't write it, just so you're clear. John Logan is the writer of the play, who also wrote the movie Gladiator, the famous film. And the play has already been produced and it premiered on Broadway. So we're just doing another production of it. And we're hopeful to get the rights to do the full movie as a play. But in working on that play, Ilya Volek, the other actor that's playing Mark Rothko, it's a two-person play. I play his assistant, Ken. And so we only rehearse on the telephone. So, and I learned this years ago, just working out of the actor's studio, where some actors would live across town and, it's not easy to get together, especially if you're busy. And so I started working on the phone, and then one of the great teachers at the studio, Mark Rydell, who's a director and writer himself, he wrote On Golden Pond and directed it as well. But he used to say, never get together with the other actors. Just rehearse on the phone, or sometimes don't even rehearse on the phone. Just know what scene you're working on or what piece you're working on, and then bring it to a rehearsal, And so that started to become very beneficial to me, because I learned that I'm learning the lines, whether it's on my own or over the phone. But when I come together with the other actor on stage, even though we've been communicating on the phone, there's all kind of new things that started to happen on stage that we could not have a pre-plan for, be consciously, hopefully not, or certainly unconsciously, as we retain, rhythms and systems, so that the work became revealed to me to be very spontaneous. So getting back to, rounding back to your question, yeah, you can rehearse on the telephone, and it's easy. You can be working, and I'm a big advocate of, if you're an actor or a musician, really working on one piece. I see a lot of actors over the years in school and at the actor studio, they'll jump around to different pieces, and it's like you're having multiple relationships. But if you stay with one piece, especially if you're working over the phone and you're practicing with another actor or another artist, you really start to learn about the nuances of your own instrument, because you keep working on a piece and you realize sometimes, if you're a less experienced actor, you start to feel that you're playing this rhythm in this system because it feels safe. But eventually you'll take a break from the piece and you'll come back, and all kind of new stuff will start to happen. And the actor will start to surrender a lot more to the spontaneous creativity that's happening in the moment. And that's the ultimate goal, I think, for every artist, that takes years and years to cultivate. But that's a good beginning, is rehearsing on the phone. And when there's COVID and you can't get together, and I'm seeing a lot of fellow actors and people where they get on Zoom and they'll even do a scene. They'll invite audience to it. So yeah, I know that was long-winded, but I hope it was helpful.
That's very, very interesting. I was hearing what you're saying about rehearsing on the phone and thinking, surely then if in your example, you would do some rehearsals on the phone and then you get to that point where you meet face to face, surely one of the biggest changes for you will be, oh, now you've got the expressiveness
Yes.
that comes with what you were hearing on the phone. And I imagine that must be a mix of disconcerting, but also exciting because, as you said, it changes things around almost, right?
Yeah, and it's also, acting is such a sensitive craft. It's just coming on stage or on front of the camera, the instantaneous things that are given to us as talent, it's everywhere. Mostly how you feel that day, because you're going to feel different every day and moment to moment. And so working on the phone like that, or working on your own and knowing what's going to come together is what I really learned working on camera, because the way I worked on stage did not translate in front of the camera. That took me and I will forever be learning how to work on camera or on stage for that matter. But acclimating from working on stage to camera, your greatest friend is not knowing, because then you become spontaneous. You have to spontaneously learn the scene that you're shooting that day. You have to know the lines. But, there's a system to learning the lines where you're not learning them with any kind of, or as I like to say, learn the lines rote. Like you can say the alphabet in English. I know in America it has a melody to it, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you have to get rid of that when you're learning your lines, because you'll unconsciously learn the lines with a melody. You don't even know you're doing it. And so then you play the scene and you never let the other actor in to create a spontaneous moment. And so learning your lines rote, like Jill and John went to the store and John noticed a hurricane. Well, that was coming. So you could learn that line. Jill and John went to the store and noticed a hurricane, and you start learning the lines that way versus John and Jill went to the store and noticed a hurricane. So you learn your whole script or lines that way. And then you engage with hopefully what is a great actor. And even if they're not, they're less experienced and they're learning, because that happens at all levels in the industry, whether you're in school or, on a set with named talent. Some actors work differently, but my greatest friend is not knowing. And so that's some of the work that I've noticed when we were shooting Red, because we did come together under restrictions with COVID and everyone was safe and wearing masks and tests were being given. But because we had to work and rehearse over the phone, and we got into the space and now there's a camera and there's a DP and there's lighting and, there's stop and go with production, you can survive on not knowing. And so you just get, it helps the actor not push or indicate, so again, extending that answer to your question, and feel free to interrupt me. I too am learning on Zoom. It's not sometimes you can just go on and then someone may feel that it's impolite to interrupt, but by all means, you're the interviewer. So
no, that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. I love detail, and you've given an incredible amount of detail. But
okay,
I want to go back to the very start.
great.
So, of you. So when do you remember getting an interest in being an actor? Now, obviously, you've already talked quite a bit about the fact that you also act in front of a camera, but you also act on stage. And I think that's very important for people to know that you're multifaceted in that department.
Yes.
So when you did first get the acting bug, as it were, was it one or the other, e.g. you wanted to act on stage, or you wanted to be an actor in front of a camera and a big shot movie star a la Tom Cruise or someone like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, certainly my aspirations, when I really started studying acting formally when I was 19 in college, and I actually changed my major from aeronautical studies into full theater. Uh, because I got bit by the acting bug, if you will, and the instant aspiration, I think, if you're not groomed in a family of actors and you come about by formally going to school and studying acting, the dream is, oh, I want to be on camera, I want to be a star. And very quickly on the fast track, I learned that, that does not come easy. As people who are not even in the industry always say, boy, that's a tough profession. And it's the toughest, and early on, I learned that it was being more beneficial to me as a person studying acting, where I was understanding myself better, how I socialized, and so it was a win-win. But there was a turn where I had enough training where I started to work in theater and doing stage in Los Angeles, that I started to have a greater appreciation for the craft. And so then, of course, I pressed into trying to get the best education I could. And that carried me all the way through from working with Uta Hagen from HB Studios, which she's an old black and white film star and big stage star on Broadway. And then Howard Fine, and then I met Michael Arabian, who was a noted director in Los Angeles and New York for theater, and also studied with him. And then that pushed me into getting accepted to the Actors Studio, both which is in New York and LA. And that's where my career really started to change. And so getting more of that formal education and really understanding my instrument, my creativity, being, this isn't too much of a word, but grossly exposed by very powerful and noted talent that are recognized in the world, that are part of the Actors Studio, where you get up on the stage and you think you know something and they just slice you down, and that was early on, and still could happen if I went to the studio, if I was exploring a new character or trying to investigate some new character that I was trying to maybe take on onto the stage or into a movie, which I always do. I get vetted by the people that I trust there, that are the heads of the studio. But yeah, to come full circle back, it was that process that I started to enjoy how I was feeling. And that, Uta Hagen said to me, and it's actually in her book, she writes, it takes 20 years to become a masterful crafted actor.
Okay.
No matter which way you come at it. And so as I learned that and I started to grow and I started to work more and started to work with more reputable talent, reputable productions, I started to see a trend that, if I do the work will come. And so it's been. So my aspirations is to play stage and film. Film certainly and TV pay better. But I'm excited to work on characters that, I can bring my real life experience to the role. And, as I always say, if I can change one person's perspective to open up, to have hope, then I've done my job. And that's starting with me. But for my audience, it goes without saying. So my aspirations now are filled with gratitude of getting roles that I'm really right for, that I can be part of a group of other actors and production in film and television to really, extend hope to the community. Even if I'm playing a villain or a tough character, that I'm vetting the hero, like I am in Weekend Warriors. It's a coming of age of a young boy, a teenage boy who's coming into adolescence, and he's being bullied in school, and then he has to go off on this weekend warrior trip and has to face 10 times that of the bully that he was in school. So by me playing that role in that film, and still this character as this young boy, not giving the ending away, but facing his own coming of age, his own mortality, if you will, but his survival. And so playing roles where I can, whether I'm playing the villain, where I'm playing the antagonist or the protagonist, that's my ultimate goal, is to reach the audience, because if I do that, then I'm doing my job, and then that warrants me more work, to help community and help the audience move forward in the excitement of a film, whether it's an action film or a horror film or a comedy or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So on IMDb, do you look on your own IMDb page much?
It's checked in with from my reps. I don't really have a need to go to it other than seeing if there's a new project. Certainly every now and again, I'll check to see if there's any new press that's come through. Sometimes it'll show up on IMDb.
Yes, of course.
If I don't get an alert through Google or one of my reps. But every now and again, I'll take a look.
The reason why I ask is because obviously your filmography is there, and you go to your very first credits. At the very, very bottom of your list of credits is as cop in the show NYPD Blue back in 1994. I had to ask, is this correct? And do you remember this at all?
Yeah, it was a day player role where I was bumped up as a what do you call it? Featured extra. So I got the credit for playing in that scene where I have more time on camera, where I was playing an LAPD uniformed police officer. I didn't have any dialogue, but was just in the shot. It was one of the early credits that I got that helped me get my SAG card, where I got Taft-Heartedly. It was one of the first things, and that's what an actor does when they come to LA. Often they'll join what is called, I think it's called Extras Casting, or the Casting Network. I haven't been a member for many, many years, but once you earn your Screen Actors SAG card, and you get that by getting if you get 3 featured extra parts, you get 3 what are called vouchers, which helps you get your SAG card. So that was one of them for me.
Oh, cool. It's just really awesome to see that you actually remember that experience, considering it was 1994, and as you say, it was just an extra role.
Yeah, I was early on in my career, and the representative that I had at the time got me that slot. So yeah. And they're good. They're very good in the beginning of a career, because it'll help you get your SAG card eventually. So
okay. And those early years of your career, when you had those extra parts, or you were in say shorts and so on, what was the most difficult experiences for you in regards to getting noticed for roles and moving on, as it were, in your career?
Yeah, I used, if you got a part in a small film and, it's being publicized. I remember I did a short film called The Select Fit. And interestingly enough, I did that in, I think it was 2003, 2004. And I remember that it got a lot of good press. I played one of the 3 leads in this short film, and then it ended up being selected by Fox for what was the show at the time, not Dead at 21. That was another show that I did. That was boy, it's so far back, but that particular short film, it's on IMDb, it's YouTube, it's around. But yeah, you get excited that you think it's going to give you, more opportunities, and it got into a couple of film festivals, and then certain things don't happen with it. It was, that was the big thing. The LA Film Festival, it was selected in one of the top 5 shorts out of like 7,000 submissions. And it was premiered at a very famous movie theater in Los Angeles called the ArcLight in Hollywood, where a lot of big movie premieres go. And this is where the short festival was being premiered. And so we got to see it on a big screen. And now we're in the running to win this $1 million purse as one of 5 finalists. We came in second, runner up to the winner. And you get so close, and you're early on in your career. And so being a younger actor and less experience, what I learned is this business is really tough, and I have probably 50 or 100 of those types of stories. And as of recent, you get really close, you get big meetings, or COVID comes about and you lose opportunities. And then I started to learn that this is just fate, and whatever that fate is, it's trying to communicate to you as an artist. It's testing your stamina and your will to keep creating, and so you have to trust, or as I say to fellow actors or friends or anyone in life, you have to look at the road signs that are coming up in your life. Do you keep going down this road? Is there enough affirmation, whether you get good press or someone has you in mind for a film that they're writing and they have previous validated work, or you like working with them, if the ultimate goal is to, make money in this business, because at a certain point you have to decide whether or not the road signs are saying keep going or veer left. You're not getting enough notoriety or press. There's bills to be paid. Are there enough support systems around you that are believing in you? These are questions. And there's certainly the question of staying in the business just to be an artist, just to enjoy it. I know of artist friends of mine that approached their career very differently and got recognized in something, and now they're big stars, so I always say you have to trust your feeling, just like you do as a good artist. It's all about feelings and knowing how to process those feelings, that you're not overindulging or withholding, and that's like learning how to fight, professionally for your career, if you will. And you start to learn how people receive you and understand you. You get certain jobs, you get work from work. So that's also a road sign. The Weekend Warrior film that I'm doing is coming from another film that I did with that director. And now we're doing another film that hasn't been announced yet, that I've brought in talent that I know and talent they know, name talent. And so you start to see things start to build and grow organically. And that way you can keep a handle on it, because I think sometimes if success comes too fast, it can be testing to the artist. So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So
you can always edit this interview.
Oh, it's going up as it is. Well, see how much, if we're here for the next 3 hours, then I might consider it. But right now, I'm just loving listening to you talk about these things. Because of course, I have absolute zero knowledge or skill beyond watching a movie and then critiquing acting from a reviewer perspective. But even that is flawed, because everyone's taste and style will always be very, very different. What I enjoy, another person can absolutely despise.
Yeah, and that's why I never turn down an opportunity unless I'm working on set or working on stage and I'm, embraced by production. But I never turn down, and I learned this from a really good friend of mine, a very successful artist, a chance to be interviewed, because it doesn't matter who or what the situation is, to speak of your craft, or even one time I was given great advice by a very famous actor who said, never turn down any work if you're not working. Certainly if it's within your morality and, things that you want to do, you don't do every job as an actor, but, if it's right for you and it feels good, you should not turn it down, even if it's not paid, because uh, it allows you to learn about yourself. This business is so delicate to work on camera and to keep working. The artist has to really learn about themselves. Otherwise, you get pigeonholed. You know, even if you're a great looking person, if your craft is not at the speed, you know, and we see it in the industry in famous movies past, that actor will keep playing those same kind of roles. They may get some notoriety, but for them to play a lead role, that the actor has and keep getting work, to be relative, you have to keep developing your craft. And it's very enjoyable because you get to learn about yourself. And for me, I always say it's always made me a better person. You know, you understand people better, because ultimately a character is, when the writing is for, say, me as a character, it's me trying to achieve a goal, you know, and express my need that's going to be always filled with hope, whether you're playing a villain and you're going to kill another character in the movie, or you're playing the hero and you're going to save another character in the movie. The personification of the actor still has to play hope. Even if you're a villain, eventually, if you want the audience to care about you or understand you, why you are damaged and you're playing a villainous character. You know, because every person that's the audience, we're all human beings, and we all feel each other's you know, woes, no matter what society or what social background or economic background you come. You know, I said to a friend of mine some time ago, sometimes I'll get really bad reviews from general audience on streaming, you know, whether it's Amazon or Netflix or IMDb, where a general audience can write a bad review. And, you know, when I was younger, you know, I would get criticism from people in class and you kind of get defensive. But I started to learn that even if only one person in the audience or one person writes something that's very critical, you know, as an artist, you learn to take it with a grain of salt. But I realized, Carl, that there's always some little bit of truth in that criticism.
Fair.
You know, and so, because that's my mirror, even if it's one person or hundreds of people, thousands of people, or one big name critic, you know, say like a Siskel and Ebert, they give a criticism. Not that I've ever gotten a critique from them. I'd like to one day, or the likes thereof. But yeah, you start to realize, and that's where you really become a crafted artist, where you start to feel, you realize that your transparency is always being exposed by every other human being. And I learned that some of that criticism that's really minute, I'll recognize it because I will have heard someone else had said it a time before. You know, it could have been 5 years ago. And so it makes me think about that. It makes me open up a little more. Why did they say that?
Okay.
You know, and I think the unconscious is very powerful. Even an artist could go, well, they're hating on me, or they're jealous, you know, and that's okay. But I think the unconscious has a lot to reveal in us as human beings, certainly as artists. And that is to play hope, you know, and I've learned that at the actor studio more than anywhere in my training, is that even if I'm playing a villainous character, how do I play hope? You know, and speaking of Anonymous 616, one of the redeeming qualities, again, that I got to see a handful of times of just general audience writing in on IMDb and Amazon Prime, is that even though this character was very villainous, I still cared about him. You know, and that's the parts that, if I could allude to anything for a young actor or an experienced actor, you know, as I'm always learning constantly, I'm learning right now with you on the phone, is to how do we get to that place that we let people in to see why we are acting villainous or hopeful, so yeah, that was long-winded again.
Don't worry about that. It's great. But you did bring it up, so let's dive into it. My first experience of your work obviously came from the exceedingly great horror thriller Anonymous 616, where you played the lead Jason, a character, as you've talked about, with many layers that begin to unpeel over a night of friends reuniting that turns horrifying. Now, that character and that role, can you remember what attracted you to it when you, I guess, were given either the script or went to audition? Because let's not beat around the bush with this one. It's a very intense performance and character, Jason.
Yes. What attracted me to this role was getting the audition from my reps, and I was originally up for not that particular role that I played as Jason. I was up for the role of Eric.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was so excited about the audition because the dialogue, which you recollect in the film, that he's talking about DMT and all the scientific jargon that went with the writing and the script of this character. So I came in for the audition, and I originally did that piece, but I was only in the room with casting and the director at the time, who was Mike Boss. There was maybe 3 or 4 other people in the room at the time, and the person that I read with. Almost halfway through the reading, he said, "I'm going to stop," and then the director looked over at one of the casting people and said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" And they said, "Yes, I am." And I didn't know what they were talking about. He said, "Daniel, I want to give you another character to read for." He didn't say who it was or what it was. And he goes, "We can certainly reschedule you to come back in to read on another day to give you time, or you can look at it, and if you want to read today, you can. And if not, if you decide later you want to come back, no problem." So this audition came by way for me in light of another film that I was producing along with my rep, Barry Cross, that fell apart. And so I was getting ready to go into a really great production. And so now the production got put on hold. So I was really kind of antsy to get a role in a film. And I was just coming off a play a year ago. And as actors, speaking of the business, you're trying to stay relative, you're trying to work, you're trying to get work that's going to give you exposure. And so this audition came up, and this indie film, and I went in on it. And when I read the script in the lobby, not the script, but the sides, just for the character for Jason, it just instantly connected with me. I didn't need to practice. I had enough skill set, but something was happening in that moment that I had never experienced before, was how right I was for the role, and the instantaneous feeling that I can go back in there today and do this audition. Because when you're younger, sometimes and depending upon your personality type, you want to prepare. And that's what I was alluding to early on in the conversation, with trusting the spontaneousness, the creativity, the instantaneous thought that actually works, I believe, for us. I was excited when you said, "We're just going to talk today." There was no plan, and now it's alluding to this experience. And that's what we try to do as artists, just like musicians when they play jazz, or a great artist that have spontaneously rehearsed, say like a Led Zeppelin, I know you probably like them, I suspect, or the Rolling Stones, they warm up, but they when they come together, it's spontaneous, and so it takes a skill set, and experience to learn that. So I instantly gravitated towards the part. I went in, I did the audition. I can share that with you too. I have that on tape. It's interesting, that the audition before we shot the movie.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know anything about the script. It was a very, very, very nothing that we see in the movie. I just knew that it was we just got the sides, so I didn't know a lot that was going on. And so then I got the call back, and I went in, and they gave me a little bit more, or no, I think it was the same script they gave me that first day. I came back a week later and didn't know anything for, I think, almost 3 weeks, because it was over the Christmas break and New Year's 2017. I think it was 2016 going into 2017.
Yeah.
And then they offered me the part, and then they sent me the script. And when I read, sometimes when I relive an experience, it takes me back. So when I read the script, there were certainly concerns because of how intense it was. And
Yeah.
there was lengthy conversations with family, with my representatives. And then it came about to understand the gross intensity of PTSD that soldiers, men and women, that go through in war. And so I knew at that point, when I got that okay by a handful of mentors of mine, that I needed to do the film. But I also needed to do the film for me. It wasn't just for soldiers that were suffering from PTSD. It was exposing the PTSD that was in me.
Okay.
And I didn't really know that until almost a year and 2 years after the film came out.
Right.
It really started working, because I started to work a lot more from that role and getting some of the publicity that came from that movie. And so it even made it made me grow as an actor. But getting back to your original question, when I knew that I was going to approach it from that perspective of the suffering of what goes on with military,
Yeah.
it engaged me on a whole other level. And so that was the deep research that I did, where I started to really understand post-traumatic stress disorder for veterans, active duty. And that was certainly the case with Jason, my character in this movie. He was coming home on a weekend or a 2-week leave pass after serving 3 tours.
Yeah.
And was just, spent. And the film was even shot in a way, even how you're seeing me on camera now. The DP very creatively shot the movie in a way to even make me look more ravaged from having 3 tours of duty.
Yeah.
Where the character was not, we had discussions where we wanted to reach the audience through the feeling, and avoid anything that could not expose that or detract from that. And so there were certain angles how the camera was used, especially when I was on the computer, to really show just the ravages of war, to show the stress. So yeah, that was my strong purposefulness. And that certainly just kept unfolding as we were making the film. It got very intense. Certainly safe, but very intense. And I think once everyone started to really acclimate, and that's what's great about making a film on any level, whether it's a student film or some big studio film or, episodic television show, the spontaneity of the creativity, and it gets, as you move up in production, it gets so fast. I attribute it to being like a professional sportsman where, you just got to get in there and you got to survive. You got to trust your instincts. Again, that spontaneity. And that's what turned me on about the part too, that the script was loaded with acting traps. And I think you give reference to that in both the reviews, the original write-up that you did from your channel, and also the video review. And you can see where, you know, all of us being growing artists and always places to nip and tuck, get better, grow, expand. But I could see in the dialogue that it was filled with acting traps, and to play that bravado, that toughness, you know, that's an easy place to, you know, for actors, it's easy to play anger, just like a human being. It's easy to be angry, but the real power lies in the vulnerability, you know, the real power of any exchange, whether you're apologizing to somebody for trespassing, you know, or a character that is vulnerable because they've been trespassed. But the dialogue, if it's written well, will dramatize it to cause the actor to have to fight against their hope and feeling. And as they're denied by the other actors to create the drama, therefore comes vulnerability. And it makes me think of that scene in Anonymous. It's such a quick shot. But when I go to Jessica, the actress that plays my fiance, with that tool nail gun to try to get her to confess, and you see me crying, you see me pouring, you know, and there was a lot of that in the film, and they cut it and edited it the way they did, and I think they did a great job. Just enough to show the scars and the PTSD of such a character, you know, and that's what we do, right? We mask our pain, you know, with that bravado, with the ego. And I thought that this character was so perfect for me to try to play him as an active duty, you know, special forces soldier in the military, but to see the vulnerability of what takes place relationally with my fiance, who was cheating on me. You know, I mean, this is the real stuff, you know. This is it's like what is in domestic violence. I don't know what it might be called in England, but when there's a domestic violence call from the police department, that's the most dangerous call the police department gets, more than burglary, more than an assault out on the street. When there's domestic violence, when the deepest of feelings are being exposed between loved ones or couples,
Right.
it's dangerous because they'll act out of ways that are really in their gut, or things that are unresolved from their childhood. And that is how I approached Jason. That whatever backstory I had too long to share before I became into the military, became a special forces soldier, but the experiences that I took on in war in the backstory were very relative, which come up in the film and on the when I'm talking to the computer, where you realize that I was doing special ops that were off the grid, off the radar of, you know, torturing POWs to get information that we couldn't get otherwise. And so when it pops up on the computer, that vulnerability comes. And then because the storyline was so good, you know, for any good protagonist, all things should be closing in. So as you realize, we did the DMT, you know, I have well, it first starts with Eric. He's a successful realtor. He's living in America. I start to have feelings, wow, he's living on blood that I have shed and my fellow men have shed to bring freedom, to give him this opportunity. You know, it starts to build, you know, and then it builds when we do the drug, and he's a little sarcastic to me as Eric.
Yes.
Not as the actor himself, because he was a beautiful soul, David. But in the exchanges, it starts to unwind, and when we do the drug, that's where it gets released, and that's when I can't control it anymore. And now I'm certain that he's had an affair, and all the little jabs or shortcomings or sarcasm that he said since I arrived, it just keeps closing in on me, and the character cannot stop these demons, right, coming up out of him from having been in war, and unexpressed energy, and harboring and holding and never talking about the pain, right? That's what great character is. They're just they're beat up, and whether you're a hero that's going to rescue a bunch of people, or you're a villain that's going to hurt a lot of people in a storyline, it's interesting to see. And so playing Jason in its intensities, and that's why I think it was cut really well, because it's really short, where you see the opening of the film, where I discover all these people are dead in the room and I don't know how it happened.
Of course.
And then I start to put it together, and then I want to survive as the character, and then it just keeps, unwinding. So yeah, I don't know if that helps. I know that, again, that was long-winded, but yeah.
That's awesome. I thought it was interesting as well. You point upon, obviously, things get quite, the limits are pushed. The limits are pushed as the movie goes on, Anonymous 616, particularly the latter portion of the film. And you did talk about how you talked to your family about elements and stuff like that. Was there ever a point in some of those events where you thought, even as an actor, whoa, this might be too much for me? Was there ever a point, considering some of the events that take place in the last 30 odd minutes?
Not while we were making the film.
Okay.
I knew when I vetted the script, certainly for myself, and shared with family and colleagues, really great mentors at the Actors Studio. Charlie Deercup was one of them, who was in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He also was in a lot of huge films, and he's an older gentleman now and a great actor. And more of a great actor, he's a great friend.
Awesome.
And I shared a lot with him. I also shared with a theater director, and very accomplished theater director named Michael Arabian in Los Angeles, who's directed me in several stage plays, and also was a great teacher. And so as I started to understand the material, I knew at that point, and I knew how they were going to shoot certain elements, that certain things would be faded out and implied. And yes, certainly still very intense, but I was turned on by the role because of, again, going back to the original objective, was what these types of active duty and veterans go through.
Yeah.
And as I started to do more research early on, even after I accepted the role, and you see the domestic violence that goes on, at least in America, I presume it's all around the world, and God forbid there's not laws to protect or resources to protect families, but some of these veterans, they come home and things just like this happen. And so not in terms of the storyline and doing DMT and drugs, no drugs involved, or maybe drugs involved, or addiction involved to deal with the PTSD of being in war. And then and story after story that I was finding of just horrific situations with families. And I thought, wow, here's a platform, a canvas that is exposing all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm an actor, and I think as we acclimate into society, as we grow as beings, just like we're seeing everything is being seen, everybody knows everything. And if you don't believe that, you're living in the past. And so even when we shot the film early on it was March of 2017, we filmed it, and it came out like almost a year later, I guess it was. But the more that I owned the decision, whether it was the first minute or the last 30 minutes of that movie, that it was my job to bear my feelings, my draw, and I mean, some of the best criticism that I've gotten are from veterans, that will write in and say, I wish there was more stories that showed this, not per se that storyline, because it gets very dark at points,
Yeah.
but to show how intense and because thank God, some of these veterans, soldiers, active duty military, they just think about these things. Some of them act them out, but to be able to see such an intense expression in this movie of a character that's dealing with PTSD, it opens up the point where there is a conversation where you go, God, that's how I feel, whether it's to do harm to themselves or someone else, because they can't express their feelings, So yeah, I think the greatest criticism I've gotten is a handful of people that I didn't even know that had written in, that were active duty military, and have been so supportive and validating for me, for my decision to play this role. So,
Oh, that's awesome. That really is amazing stuff. And as you say, I mean, considering the role of they're the people who are going to write into either criticize or praise, yeah, you said it yourself, what validation,
yeah.
But that same year, at least it was released then, we starred in another horror movie, although one with a bit more of a comedic edge in One Must Fall.
Yes.
More fun?
Yeah, that was, that had more of a thriller, comedic horror genre, I guess there's however you say, but yeah, I was, interestingly enough, I was originally not cast, but originally being auditioning for the gentleman that actually played the killer.
Oh, okay.
And then interestingly enough, speaking of, everyone, it's in the eyes of the beholder of how people see you, certainly filmmakers and directors, and Antonio Pantoa, the amazing director of One Must Fall, who has me lined up for another feature film with him, and one of the projects that got canceled with this musical artist that was going to play the lead in the video shot in LA, but it got canceled because of COVID. But Antonio Pantoa, when he reached out to me after I knew they were not going to bring me in for that role, he said, I have the perfect role in mind for you. And so all he sent me was the sides, and it wasn't a lot. And, my actor ego was, well, I wanted this big part, so I presumed. And it was a very big part, the role of the killer in the movie. And so he goes, I have you in this mind for this other role. And it's a character that is, I don't know if you've got to see the film yet, but where I play a victim.
Indeed.
And so you see, if you've seen the trailer, you'll see kind of like the flip side of this vulnerable character that is begging for his life, who gets captured by the killer. And so the movie was incredible. The filming was incredible. Antonio Pantoa, the producers were incredible. It was just an amazing experience. It was all shot in Kentucky, and they treated me as much as I had hoped that I treated them as the actor in the collaboration. But yeah, very, very fun. But my character was also divulging very deep, vulnerable issues of what it really means to beg for your life.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting, when I look back at that film, I learned, every movie, every play, every scene you work on in class, every rehearsal, whether you're a musician, every gig, whether you're playing at a local pub or you're playing, to the world, you're always learning. And when I look back in that movie, we shot it early in 2018. And I see myself in the film where I was pushing at points, and because film is so delicate, it's such a delicate medium. And but yeah, I think that goes without saying in terms of the process because it's not just all fun and great and, oh, you did a great job. And yeah, you still get tough press sometimes, or an audience, a fan will write in and they'll say something that's tough to hear, so it's always in process. I attribute, being a great actor is like being a great person. We're always in a great process, trying to be transparent, share our feelings, take in good advice. But yeah, that movie was very fun because I got to learn a lot, and was grateful that my work was received very well in Kentucky and with Antonio. But again, yeah, so incredible time shooting that movie. So thank you for asking.
I'm glad that was the case, particularly as well with just a little bit digging, and because of the both films coming out in 2018, Anonymous and One Must Fall. I don't know if you were particularly aware, but you had caught the attention of a horror crowd, even though both films have elements of comedy and thriller and so on. That association, the idea that you could be associated with horror movies, or at least that style, is that something that you mind? And considering you are such a versatile actor on stage and in front of the camera, because of those two movies, would that be something you particularly care about? Or would it be like, oh, brilliant, at least the horror community is accepting me?
I think if there's any opportunity for me as an artist, that if I do my job for me, and certainly the way I've been trained and the aspirations and dreams that I have, that any audience is an opportunity. Certainly for me to grow as an artist, to learn more about my instrument, to create opportunities. I mean, I can't tell you, even One Must Fall, and Antonio Pantoja again, COVID cut it off, but he was shooting this major artist that just had a press release around the world on Yahoo and other sources. And he called me up, he goes, Daniel, if you're available, I want to cast you as the lead. It's a guy and a girl. It's a Bonnie and Clyde premise. It's just going to be you and her in the shot. It's with this up and coming received artist. He's getting press around the world. And so here again, I'm playing a very villainous character that's based on Bonnie and Clyde, the American story.
Of course.
Probably, I suspect. The movie, certainly. And this is how the work comes. As you grow and as your career builds, you learn that your greatest asset are relationships. So you start to have better working relationships. You start to work better as an artist just from experience, and now you start to build relationships, and you start to work with directors and producers that are getting projects funded and made. And as I said earlier in the conversation, as you move up in the work, it gets faster and faster because you start to, and that's the truth, that you're growing as an actor, or you're growing as a talent. Show up and do your job. You hire a plumber, they come and they fix your pipes. You hire an actor, they show up, they know their lines, they're on time, they're very respectful, they're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so any audience is an opportunity. I used to drive professionally in Los Angeles as a security driver, and I had really profound clients.
Yeah.
And one of which was Malcolm McDowell, who is a Brit, who from he was in Batman as one of the three. I mean, my God, he was in Clockwork Orange.
Of course. Yeah.
And he was my client. I was a young actor at the time, and I picked him up, and he said to me, he goes, "What do? You look like an actor." And that made me feel good. I had no credits at the time and had very little experience. And he said to me, he goes, you need to take every job that comes your way, if you're not already working and getting paid, and you are free to work, because he's the one that said to me, everyone is your audience, and you're always learning and you're always growing, and I'll never forget that. So, and here, you know, what's interesting, Carl, is here, almost 20 years later, maybe 17 years ago when I met him in that brief instant, that there's a project in development I'm on called The Hit. And we sent an offer actually to Malcolm McDowell to play a role in the film, and COVID had hit and everything just kind of shut down. But just to kind of give perspective of a 17 to 20 year period, here I am driving this man, and now there's a film that I'm cast in as the lead called The Hit. It's in development. You can see it on IMDb with great talent already attached. And now we're trying to get Malcolm McDowell attached to the film. And it's just, that just dawned on me, like how grateful I am, you know,
That's
to
good
not
to
to
know.
have not given up, to have not given up, you know, to persevere and grow. So, but yeah, that was long-winded again. But to the horror crowd, to primetime television crowd, whether that's a horror genre, American Horror Story. I know when Anonymous 616 came out and I was getting some notoriety and attention, my agent and my manager were trying to get me on American Horror Story. And you know, just trying to find a way to get a bigger audience, you know.
Yeah.
And even Weekend Warriors, it's not a horror film, but I do play the lead antagonist. And you'll see in that film, very similar to that which I played in Anonymous, in Weekend Warriors, where the character hopefully will be redeemed based on why he moves into that area, you know.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. But yeah, I have, you know, people are people, audience is audience. And if I'm so given the privilege to play to any audience, you know, to express myself as a living being to someone else, to hopefully, again, have a breakthrough, whether I make them laugh or make them cry. Hopefully they don't hate me, but, you know, and, you know, make a connection.
Well, hating your character's different. You know, if your character's such a villain that they can't relate in any way, shape, or form and just despise you, then it's still an emotional reaction. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully there's some contrast, you know, to the other characters in the film that build a bridge with the audience that way.
Of course.
You know? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned a couple of times already on the 1st of April, 2021, Weekend Warriors. Trailer is out now. Go check it out. It is very, very intriguing. You've talked about it being a coming of age. And in the trailer, when your character is shown, Wesley is his name, right?
Yes.
Yes. Instantly, if you know your body of work in the past, in particularly things like Anonymous and stuff like that, there is a connection to be being made in the brief shots that you're in the trailer, where it's like, okay, you could be playing a character that's got a little bit of that intensity again. Is that actually the case across the film, without spoiling it, of course?
Absolutely not. The movie, cool. just like the trailer comes about, where it looks like it's going one way and then it completely makes a right-hand turn when my character comes forth, that you can see in the teaser. I have not seen the entire film yet.
Oh, awesome.
But soon will, probably in the next week. I was invited to see it with summer production on a Zoom meeting like this because of COVID. So I anticipate seeing the whole film. I have seen some dailies of what was being put in the final cut, which was really encouraging. So you're going to see me, and I am the team leader on this expedition that we're going off as weekend warriors. So I'm the leader to the group to keep people motivated, to keep them encouraged, to keep them uplifted, because we're battling against another team of paintballers. You know,
Yeah.
we're out in the wilderness. I'm sure you know of this exercise that people do.
Absolutely.
Paintball. And so, yeah, so there's a great part in the film where I have to bring most of the cast together, the main cast, all those fine actors and actresses that are on my team. And who also is on my team is the young actor who is played by Jack Gross and Juliette Rouche, the brother and sister that we meet early on in the film. And they're the niece and nephew of Joey, who is played by Jason London.
Yeah.
And so they're in this group powwow where I have to say, look, you know, if we're going to win this, you know, we've got to come together. We've got to unite. We've got to be communicative. We've got to work as a team. And so so to kind of give reference to your question, you can see where my character is. He's of solution and value to the storyline, but then something happens where he is lied to, sadly. And that's a good teaser because I'm not giving it away.
Fair enough.
And that's what brings his redemption for his actions, is that same as he was in trouble before the movie started, because my character, his background, which is alluded to in the story, and I can't share that,
of course,
without giving it away. But you see that he was already in trouble emotionally, psychologically, but is trying to do good, similar to Jason, an anonymous 616. He goes off to war, you know, he experiences these things that happen to him. And so there's a stirring in him that gets awakened by an experience, just like in real life. Someone loses their spouse, a loved one. I remember, you know, I've lost both my mother and father in my life, and they were both horribly tragic, as they would be for anyone, no matter how close or unclose you might be with a parent, presumably knowing them to some degree. But Carl, when I lost a pet that I owned for 20 years, because the love between me and the pet was unconditional, the pet to me, I experienced feelings that it triggered me in ways that I never imagined, because there was no PTSD, there was no unconscious hurt that ever happened between me and my pet.
Yeah.
I never saw it coming. It came out of left field. And it helped me grow substantially as a human being, to be more empathetic with myself and certainly others. And certainly getting to, as an actor, it made me grow as an actor, you know. And that happened about almost 2 years ago to the date. And I remember working on Weekend Warriors and even some other projects, and revisiting that feeling. And so when a sudden event comes into our lives, that sudden event could be, like I said, a loss of a loved one, or it could be someone says a word that either lifts you up or cuts you down. And both ways, it can activate suppressed feelings that happened to us as a child. And so learning about those sensitivities as an actor in the work, when that trigger goes off in Weekend Warriors, my character does a 180.
Yeah.
And I'm finding, what is really beautiful, because here I'm getting ready to do another film that's upcoming, that's hasn't been announced yet, that I am as grateful as I am to be here sharing it with you, as I am to have the opportunity. You know, as we know, this business is tough. But this upcoming project, you know, as I always say, my next role is my dream role.
Okay.
because it's going to make me have to go a little bit deeper. And I'm playing a very tough character in this upcoming film. And he goes through a complete 180 from intensity to feeling to letting go, you know, without giving it away too much.
No, but you're telling what you're describing is automatically puts a smile on my face, considering what we've been talking about, how 180s and intensity and stuff like that. The idea that you would be playing a role that does the opposite of that,
yes,
is immediately fascinating.
And I'm doing that in the play right now, Red, the one I mentioned earlier on the call with Ilya Volek. Ilya Volek is a native Ukrainian, and he's worked tremendously in the business as playing Russians. He's played opposite Will Smith, and he was in Indiana Jones Part 3. He's just been in enormous films, huge roles, and he's a very powerful actor. And so, because the play Red is based on the real artist Mark Rothko, who is an Eastern European, this role for Ilya is really perfect, just because he's from the same area that the artist was from. And my character plays his assistant, kind of similar to how I look today. I actually have these glasses on in what we shot, and I'm studious. I'm an intern for him. I'm assisting him. And the role is teaching me such great things about me as an actor, again, me as a person. But again, there's no, and you know, this piece, if we get lucky enough to get the rights to shoot the whole thing as a movie, it's pretty horrific because it's no secret that the play has been published and already put on, not as a movie like we're bidding for.
Yeah.
But Mark Rothko, the famed artist whose last collection sold for $83 million, and I feel horrible. It's on exhibit right in London. I can't think of the name of the art house that has it, but Mark Rothko, if you're curious, I'll send you a link to it. But he committed suicide in real life, you know, and that's depicted in the play.
Yeah. And
it gets it's hinted on as a very bloody ending. And what turns out to be red paint that my character discovers when I come in on him, because he's been talking about suicide throughout the play, and I kind of take him on as the role because I'm the assistant or the intern. There's a father figure element that's in the personification of the role. So and I'm also challenging him. I also have great aspirations in the role that he will take me under his wing and bring me up as a painter too, but he keeps keeping, you know, he's tough on me. But at the end of the play, when I walk in and he's really drunk, passed out, and I see all this red paint, I think he's done the deed. He's killed himself. And so when I run to him to hold him, you know, and the pain of that vulnerability of how does this happen on my watch, you know, is the 180, like you said, coming from it from another place, you know, from a storyline. But any great performance with a really crafted and experienced actor can implement that vibration as soon as they're on camera or soon as they're on stage. You can embody a real living human being, whether you're playing the supervillain or the superhero, to draw the audience in. You know, if we play stereotypes, you know, it's what's coming of age now in the industry. We love to see a flawed hero.
Yes.
We love to see a flawed hero because this is the world we're living in. There is no more, you know, fake it till you make it. No, we want the truth. I want the truth. I want the truth as an artist, so I can play the truth, because that's who's watching and listening. They've always been watching and listening. Me, you, anyone is always watching and listening. We're human beings, you know, and so that's why that's exciting for me to share, because, you know, for whatever it is in me that's allotted me the opportunities to play these really intense roles and be able to bring a full living human breathing being that can hopefully touch every person that's in the audience, you know, any economic class, any society. That's my job, and that's my reward. You know, that's my reward, to say, hey, boy, you made me feel this, or you made me think about that, or, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're focused on your work on stage and on in front of camera, but I mean, in your own life, you've been touched and felt things via artists as well, and it's not always just going to be from the craft that you've chosen to perform in. Am I right?
That's right. I mean, we cannot deny who we are in every single experience that we've encountered as a human, whether conscious or unconscious. That's what we're walking in the room with. And when we know that, then we can trust that and try to be our best self through our feelings, the instant feeling. You know, I always say, if you don't like something, if you can't create a solution with it and a collaboration, then your option is, certainly if it's available, to leave. You can always walk away.
Yeah.
If everyone is not dancing, you know, to the music. So
like that.
Yeah. And that's why I like to, you know, again, I check in with you again, please. I hope you edit this, because it's going to be very long. And I love chatting because it helps me grow, helps me express. And I love to hear more too, if any questions or.
I've got a few more for you, so we'll carry on if you're good. And now I want to touch upon, continuing the eclectic nature of the roles you take and the films you're involved in. The lay of La La Land, a little bit mouthful for me, adapted from the A.Y. Miles novel of the same name.
Yes.
This is a very interesting, and dare I say, quite unique tale. And the question's got to be, again, what on earth attracted you to want to be a part of this?
Yeah, again, yeah, it's so interesting. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this film was completed in 2017 because it had a couple of incidences in the film where they lost a cast member, and there needed to be some reshooting and reconfiguring of the film, and I remember when I auditioned for it, that same project at a different time that I had was about to go, and it didn't go. And I remember I got this audition, and I went in, and we myself and the production, the director and casting, we were listening to the same music, and I got cast in the role. And I remember they sent me the whole script. I remember I was living in a different residence at the time. And I remember I was reading the script, and I threw the script on the floor after I read it. And I said, I can't do this movie. There's no freaking way.
Okay.
And then I had a long talk with the director of the movie at the time. And when he told me how he was going to film it, that it's really to expose the abuse that goes in and around, you know, the porn industry for men and women alike, but certainly in this film, it was honed in on a female being the lead, and how she was abused as a child, and how that abuse carries over into adulthood. And then that's why he gives reference in the film how a person abused as a child is always looking for a savior.
Okay.
Right. And so depending upon the personality type, whether you become, whatever the exchange is, everyone's a victim, you know, to some degree, whether you're the assailant or the victim.
Yeah.
You know, and in this case, we realized that, you know, I think certain elements of any experience of one's life, you get drawn into doing things because you feel safe in it, because it happened to you, but you don't have enough consciousness to know that it's that your livelihood or your literal life is, you know, jeopardized, you know. And so when I had this talk with him and was pursued more, of which it's moving into, where the film is going to be marketed under the Me Too movement,
Yeah.
of understanding the abuse of women. And so the director's goal was trying to attract as much of the porn industry as he could to then give a different perspective of how people may objectify human beings.
Yeah.
You know, and take it for what it is or will. That's what he shared with me at the time. And so again, I reread the script, a little more open to it, and went for it.
Yeah.
And no doubt, looking back, just in terms of, you know, what I learned in that role, you know, again, the experience as an artist, certainly knowing what's coming of the film, for, again, you know, playing the antagonist that's trying to grind on the story's hero. You know, it's the dichotomy of what's talked about in The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell about Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. They're the same character, you know, trying to understand the dark side that drives us, and the light side to bring the dark side into balance, you know,
Absolutely.
to each their own, whatever they're, and that's what's so great about when you play a villain, because someone can see that movie, you know, and be like, you know, oh my God, the way you played that role, it was so powerful and it was so fearless and relentless. You know, I've had critics write as if they were cheering the decisions and that the story provide, of the intensity. And I just know in my own journey how that person is having a feeling of unexpressed PTSD. Right? You know, whether you're expressing a great anger to the point that you're hurting yourself or someone else, it's in there and it's got to come out. And that's what's great about art, whether it's heavy metal music or Anonymous 616. I forget the great artist. I think he was one of the artists from, I don't know if it was AC/DC, or I think it was. I'm gonna look it up when we end our call. But one of the band members, I think it was the guitarist, that he hoped that of certain groups of people or ethnicities, that they could just hear AC/DC just so they could get their anger out.
Right.
To sing along with it. Because everything is a confession. Everything is, someone hurt me. This is what happened and this is how I feel. If we never talk about it, then we're looking for things to express that for us. You know? And so that's why I think art is so important. All mediums are important, because it puts us in the question of, why do I feel this way? You know, if I do play a villainous character and I do act like this, I'm going to go to jail or someone's going to kill me.
Yeah.
You know? If I help someone and I do it right, and I don't look for recognition, but I just help, eventually my reputation will precede me just in goodwill. So then maybe I get more opportunities, you know, I don't know, but, or I play a villainous character really well and I stir up things in people. And so I can be trusted and given gracious opportunities to play like roles in films that communicate a higher understanding, or at least put it in question. Not trying to save anybody, not trying to rescue anyone, just, you know, putting the art out there to hopefully evoke a feeling. So yeah, The Lay of La La Land is simply another embodiment of that. And I'm seeing that more and more. I mean, we see it with Anonymous 616, you know, where I'm playing a character that has been very beat up. You don't see it too much. I mean, I think if any, depending on whatever industry you're in, if there's any abuse, physical abuse, or mental abuse going on, I think that there is some, and I argue this to this day, even if you're playing a co-starring role where you're just playing a killer, you know, you can bring a certain humanness, you know, to that role, you know, of something that you're struggling with internally versus just being a tough guy that, or a tough person or a tough woman that enacts some violent act in a role.
No, you're.
So,
I think you're absolutely right when you talk about that. Take horror, for example, when people talk about iconic characters within the horror genre, they'll often reference be it the heroine or hero side or the villain side. And the ones that have stood the test of times are the ones that have layers of characters, ones that are vulnerable and people can connect to, be it, say, Sigourney Weaver as Ella Ripley in Aliens, Alien, stuff like that. You know, I completely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins comes to mind. I always, you know, that really made him a global star when he played in Silence of the Lambs. And you're falling in, I mean, he's not even really, he's very vulnerable, but it's being processed through his intellect. And so you hold him in reverence just because of how thorough he is in keeping you engrossed in him allowing you in. And so you start to develop a trust, just like the character opposite him fell into.
Yeah.
It was in the storyline, it was in the writing, and I'm sure certainly in the casting, when they made the film, they knew that she would be perfect for the part. And I'm sure they discovered it more and more as they were making the movie. And you start to see all the different elements of production in a film, how a casting director is as valid as the star actor, or the producers are. As it's such a collaborative thing. And then I discovered as an artist that collaboration just becomes a bigger reservoir for you to use when you're actually making the film. I was just saying to an actor the other day in a rehearsal that we're gearing up for this new film I spoke of earlier.
Yeah.
And he had some questions about the script and how he was going to broach it with production. And I said, look, I said, you need to tell him how you feel, just go for it. I said, but just think, right now, you and I are developing more of a shorthand because he and I are two of the three leads in the movie. And we're playing detectives. And I go, look at how much we're learning just by this conversation of what will be brought in front of the camera. You know, so the artist, as you get closer to the production, you start to interweave things that allow you to have a shorthand when the camera goes off, so you can have more trust, more sovereignty of not knowing what's going to happen on the day of shooting. And so you get this spontaneous thing, you know, and really trying to play hope, always trying to win your victim over, or your patient, or your you know, person that needs to be rescued, you know, whether that's for good or for ill. It's keeping them on the hook that you're going to help them, whether you are or you're not, because now that's what everyone wants. We all want that. You know, we all want someone to help us, no matter if we're in complete denial of it, you know. And so if the writing is really good, if it's dramatized really well, and the actor has to play hope, you know, like think of Jason and Anonymous, you know, even when I revisit that film, I see places where, you know, and I needed to, it wasn't wrong, it's where I was, but as I become more understood of my instrument and of humanity, I can see places where I pushed a little too much in certain places, you know, where I could still enjoy what I was feeling or try my best, but to keep Eric or to keep Jessica or any actor in the movie still in question, like, You know who does it perfectly is Jack Nicholson. You know, he is probably revered as one of the most charismatic actors, to his own fault, you know,
Yeah.
as he's gotten, you know, we see this a lot of times with, they become so powerful, no one really, they just let them show up and do their thing. And sometimes it gets overcooked sometimes in their latter roles near the end of their career. Not him per se, you know, I don't know who's going to see this. I think he's amazing.
Oh,
He's also,
absolutely.
he's also I've heard great stories about him at the Actors Studio where when he first auditioned, you know, for people that I've worked in front of, and you hear these stories of encouragement too, where he was struggling as a young actor, and Lee Strasberg saying to him in session, "You're the least charismatic actor that the studio has, Jack, but here he is now, the most charismatic to a degree."
Incredible.
Incredible actor, you know, and so he keeps you on the hook. As soon as he's on the camera, he's always smiling. He's always having a good time, you know, and these are things that I'm trying to move closer to as an artist, you know, of having a human experience and letting, hopefully what would be great writing, start to get to the point where you're trying to still smile, but it's starting to hurt now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you've got to play that, you got to dramatize. That's where, when a great crafted actor meets great writing, and that's where you unleash unpredictable, and then you unleash a magnet of humanity that wants to know, that's intrigued because it's good writing and, you know, a real human experience coming through. So
It's the perfect combination. And it's interesting because you've talked a lot about how you're always taking advice, and how you've said at the very, very start of this conversation that you're still learning.
yeah,
But
always.
you imparting your knowledge upon young aspiring actors and workers, be it screenwriters and so on, is that something that you do quite enjoy, sort of educating or imparting your knowledge?
I do. I absolutely do. I've worked as a coach in LA for many years, helping fellow actors that I know prepare for auditions as much as they've helped me too. So I have a very strong network of friends that are mostly actors, some directors, some both. That I exercise, where I'm either helping them, or you know, I'll get a big audition and I'll go see Michael Arabian or Lou Antonio or Charlie Deercup, you know, noted people in the industry that will help me, you know, and I learn from them. And so, you know, you're only good as what you're teaching, you know, and so as I teach it, I also become more trusting and more aware of the experience when I'm working as an actor, to trust more, you know, because it's easy to have a plan. We all have a plan, you know. I mean, how hard is it to have a business like yours per se, and you have schedule plan and content and things you want to review, you know. It's the great challenge is still to be creatively trusting and spontaneous of how that work gets prepared, up to the point where you and I are having an interview. None of this was planned. I didn't even plan what I was wearing. I put this on at the last minute. You know, I tried to look my best. You know, I am so grateful, and I've come to love your channel, and I'm so grateful for the work that you've done on Anonymous. And I hope you give some love and criticism to the Lay of La La Land, which just got a distribution deal.
I saw, absolutely, yeah.
We're excited about that, and but yeah, any consideration on that, and certainly when Weekend Warriors comes out, you'll be in my top slot to getting that work out to get you to consider that as well. And so yeah. So
No
thank you
worries.
so much, Carl.
Well, I'm actually coming to the end now. Over the
Great.
next couple of years, and I guess this is very hyperbole and really a what if more than anything else. Is there something you would specifically like to accomplish in any part of your craft, be it a specific a specific role in a style of genre, or something that maybe you could take to the stage that you've been considering? I mean, you've mentioned a couple of things that you're working on already and that you would like to see, but is it just that?
Yes, it is. My dad, who always used to say, when he was asked, "What's your next, or what is your favorite uh, piece," if you will, he too being an artist, he would always say, "The next one I'm about to work on." And so, yeah, I'm holding dear into my heart with this new film that's upcoming, that hasn't been shot. It's just in preliminary stages of getting cast. Also with a biggest opportunity I've ever come upon, with a real all-star cast, working opposite some really great people that I revere, that are known throughout the industry, throughout the world.
Can I
And
just
so,
interrupt you? Is this been announced as in its title exists? Because I think I'm wondering if it's the same film that I've seen been announced.
no,
Oh,
I may have written an email to you about it, but nothing,
no,
nothing published, no PR. It we're waiting for a couple of contractual things with some of the talent and some of the production,
because it's
it'll get announced on IMDb.
yeah, that's it. That's what I'm looking at is your IMDb. There's two films
Yeah.
at the top of it where it's got announced, and one of them.
Not there. Yeah, those two films, if you go on IMDb, you'll see The Hit, you'll see Buddha and Clyde, which is still in development, The Elephant Ride, which
That's
was
the one.
one of the projects that was supposed to go, that got stopped from COVID, which is still on hold, with all that great talent that we have attached.
Yeah.
But this one has, and then The Hit, I don't know if you're on IMDb Pro, that's been announced. You can only see that on IMDb Pro.
Yeah.
That's the one we reached out to Malcolm McDowell for, which hopefully we'll still get a bite. We'll see. But this film is brand new. It's just been written. I can tell you that the director of it is the same director of Weekend Warriors.
Okay.
But other than that, I can't share, because I want to save it for when it's announced, especially because of the talent that's attached.
Yeah.
But that movie upcoming is, it's going to really it's going to take me to the next place in my craft as a film actor, because again, I certainly have some good experience on stage, and jump at the opportunity, and will likely with this play Red, with Ilya Volek, when we can get back into the theater in LA. And we're certainly going to do the whole play on film, whether it's to be published once we get the rights, or educationally if we don't. I'm very excited about that piece, as I described the character that I was playing as assistant. But with this new film, it's yeah, I'm so excited about the character, because I'm going to be able to get into new places in my craft, in my humanity. Certainly the opportunity to be in this film and with the talent that's attached, and even more looking forward to sharing with your channel, and yeah, so very excited about that.
Your enthusiasm shines through. I can almost see you wanting to say things, but of course, as you said, no, that can't happen. And just
something you learn as being in this business, wearing your creative heart on your sleeve. And yeah, it's taken me a long time to learn that lesson, but this is one that I will keep under my belt. But yeah, very excited. It's a thriller, I'll tell you that.
I've had enough experiences of having to edit interviews where someone artist has said something that is not supposed to be press released for much further into the future, and they're desperately sending emails to say, can you please cut that out? So we're more than used to that side of things anyway.
Well,
Daniel,
I'll give you this much.
Okay.
And my great temptation is, it's like the movie The Fugitive meets No Country for Old Men. That's the genre of the film. It's
It's 2 heavyweight movies there.
Yeah, so very excited for this opportunity, and again, more to come.
And on that note, that's where we're going to call time on this. Daniel, thank you so very much for
Thank you, brother.
the chat.
We'll talk again soon, and I'll look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?